Hi, I'm Tamara and I'm a part of the St. Peter's Broccoli family. You're listening to our Talks podcast from our Sunday services.
Hi guys, I'm Kylie, for anybody who does not know me. My favorite color today is yellow. Yesterday it was green. And I have the incredible privilege of heading up our children's and families work. So forgive me, I'm really used to being interrupted. So here's a little housekeeping. If you need the bathroom, please help yourselves. It's through those doors and to the left. Snacks will be later. I don't have them on me right now. And I'll talk for about 25 minutes. Just to put you at ease if you need to go. I love the time scale here in the evening service. It's like, we just have all the time in the world. Whereas in the morning service, I'm like, come on, speaker, you have 5 more minutes. And then you have to come and send people to collect their kids. Our reading today, I'm speaking today from Lamentations, because that's the best book to preach the word from. And it's in Lamentations 3, verses 22 to 26. I'm going to read from the NRSV, and it says this. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. I honestly listened to the testimonies, watching the song, hearing the prophetic word, and being in worship. I'm not really sure what I can add to this evening, but I'm just excited to see what God has done through the course of today, talking about how he is faithful. So I have a question. Here's some participation for you. I need you to just raise your hand when I ask, okay? Has anyone ever been in a team building exercise in which you have to stand up and fall backwards and have other people catch you? Anybody ever had that? Beautiful, thank you. For those who have escaped it, congratulations. That's a bit of an achievement. Okay, keep your hands raised if you have ever been dropped. Just me. Wow. And one more at the back. Okay. I see you. Hands up if you've ever dropped someone else. No, I won't do that. I won't do that. Yeah, I know, because Ben told me when I told him this story, he's like, I did that. Okay, great. So I was 14 when it first happened, and I was in drama class, and I wasn't with my friends. I don't know why. I don't know who dropped me, but I wasn't my friends. And I went for it, fully committed, stood out, arms out, fell backwards. They weren't even close. There wasn't an even, oh, she's doing it, I'm just going to quickly catch her. I fell from this to that flat. And it hurt in more ways than one. So then when I was 16, I went on a youth leadership camp, and they took it to the next level because it's youth and you can't just do things normally. They made us climb a wall and then fall backwards into a group of strangers. And I went, absolutely not. The best I could give you is I stood at the bottom of the wall and I kind of half fell back and caught myself. And I didn't realize how deep it had scarred me until I was in drama school, pursuing a career in acting. Yeah, I also don't recommend it if you can avoid it. And I stood up, and my teacher had said, you know, we want to connect to the real experience, but sometimes you can't always have the feeling, right? You don't always have the feeling, but you can usually trick your body into fight or flight mode if you have to be scared or terrified. Just doing simple things. For example, some people are afraid of falling backwards, and I didn't realize that this was so in me still at this time. She said, if you just try to lean backwards, see what happens. And even just that right now, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you my heart is now racing. My palms are sweaty, and my throat is like here. My stomach feels like it's all the way up here. I am terrified because someone once broke my trust. I was waiting for them to be there to catch me because I thought they would, and they weren't. And it's so bad that I got to, it really is terrible, guys. If Bobby, my husband, was here, I couldn't do it with him. I never would try. I wouldn't put him in that position because I trust him, except for that. I wouldn't do it with my dad, partially because I think he would drop me just for fun. And if Jesus came down and said, I want you to fall back and I'm going to catch you, I would beg him with everything I had to do something else to prove that I trusted him, because that would I genuinely, like, it would undo me. It's one of the scariest things. And it's mad because it wasn't rational. It wasn't a moment where someone did something and I was like, oh gosh, you really let me down there. It just happened. And it's embedded in me. But that trust was broken in a moment. And it was the first time, and I was 14, so I praise God for that, but it's the first time that anybody had ever let me down. The first time I had thought someone will be there and they'll do what they say, and then they didn't. And it has left such a lasting impression. And I would be genuinely surprised if in the room today there was someone who didn't have a similar story about the breaking of trust. If anyone could stand up here and say, yeah, I've walked this life, and everyone has always been there when they said they would. And there's no one that's hurt me in that way, and I haven't hurt someone else in that way. Because I think the terrible, terrible reality is that everyone and everything will fail us at some point. There really is no solid thing that we can have faith in, something that will guarantee us the result that we expect or just to do what they say they will. Except maybe ice cream. Ice cream is always there for me. Never fails me, although I shouldn't build my life on it. I tried for a season. Not a good idea, guys. I always thought I could work in an ice cream shop. Don't work in a place where you just think the food is great. But thinking a little bigger, let's look at the world. Okay, what could we have faith in that they will do and say what they say they will? Let's start with the big one, politics. Yeah. Thank you, Jerry. Faith that the politicians, he's listened to this twice already. I appreciate that. You saw that coming. Okay, what about global economy and stability? Everything's going to be okay because all of the superpowers of the world will remain there. And yep, didn't think so. Okay, beautiful. What about peace? Just the fundamental expectation that people would respect another person's basic right to live in peace. Gosh, wouldn't it be beautiful if we could trust that? Okay, thinking more about ourselves, our jobs, that the career path I have chosen will actually yield the path that I thought before. I'm the first of my family to go to university, and I was taught and encouraged, go to university, it will open the doors that you want it to open. We tell that to hundreds of young people. This is the life, go and build it, and then they have no job available at the end. There's so little there. And in every career, in every sphere, now we're dealing with, will AI replace me? Is a 3D printer going to be able to do what I can do? I love Canva, but I feel for every graphic designer who has to look at a Canva product and go, oh, they're so close, but there's so much more. Okay, the next one, and this one I do actually think we should put faith in to some extent, is people. Our friends, our family. But there's a twofold issue with this one. One is, we are all broken and we all make mistakes. And so when you put your faith in someone to always be there and always turn up, they will fail. So you trust them a little bit less. You can't actually trust them with everything. Or you are the person that people trust, and you become so dependable and so reliable that you start to come under the burden of trying to be always there for them. Because you don't want to break their trust, but you can't actually sustain meeting that need forever. So the outer world is unstable. Everything that we trust outside is not going to work. Okay, let's look inside. I can trust myself. I can trust what I know. I can trust what I can do. I can make up and I can get it to happen. And my question to you today is, how's that New Year's resolution going? How's your last and latest goal? I would argue that we are also not reliable and consistent and trustworthy and true. So, where do you stake your ground and say, this is faithful? This is trustworthy. This is stable. This is constant. The answer is in our reading. It says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. If we're looking for something to stand on, God offers himself. In Exodus 34:6, we read about God announcing his name to Moses. He comes down in the cloud because he can't reveal himself fully to Moses, but it's the closest that one human being ever really gets before Jesus. And he says, the Lord, compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. It's like one of those icebreaker games where you've got 3 words to describe yourself. Well, God chose 7, and he says this: I am the Lord, I am compassionate, I am gracious, I am slow in anger, I have love, I am love, and I am faithful. And that's the word I want to spend quite a lot of time talking about today, is his faithfulness. If we took a moment to define what faithfulness is, you may say things like loyalty, unwaveringness. And in the original Hebrew, the word translated here is called emet. And it has more depth to it. It has a more grounded feel. It's more holistically describing stability, reliability, consistency, trustworthiness. Great is your trustworthiness. God, you abound in love and trustworthiness. He alone is faithful. I'm going to give you a few biblical points of reference because I just really enjoy that kind of stuff. Abraham, who's a hero of the faith, is the first one to ever consider God to be full of emet. The first human to ever go, yes, God, you are faithful. And his wife Sarah laughs when God comes and gives them a promise. Moses, another hero, his hands are raised in battle in a sign of intercession that God is with them, and they grow weak. They need to be reinforced to remain emet, to remain steady and constant. He needs help. King David, who's described as walking with God in emet, he's with him all the time, in his stride, every day, taking steps in God's faithfulness, commits adultery and murder. When God invites Israel into a covenant relationship, into a promise, and says, I will be with you, I will go before you, I'm giving you everything, here's a promised land, I will defeat all of your enemies, they all go, yay! And then they see the giants and they go, I'm sorry, who are you? You're not faithful, we're scared, I can't trust what you say, I'm going to go the other way. Throughout biblical history, God has remained faithful. We are the ones who give up. We are the ones who run away. We are the ones who lose trust in him. It's not the other way around. And this is the context of our passage. This is the context of Lamentations. And it's really easy to listen to these lovely verses, full of faithfulness. You're my portion. I will hope in you. To think that Lamentations is a wonderful book to read to cheer you up. But it's a book of woes. It's a book of laments. They're passionate expressions of sorrow and grief. In verse 1:16 of Lamentations, it says this: This is why I weep and my eyes overflow with tears. No one is near to comfort me. No one to restore my spirit. My children are destitute because the enemy has prevailed. It doesn't get any better. The book ends like this. In Lamentations 5:22, restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return. Renew our days of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry with us beyond measure. See, the context in which these passages where they talk about God's faithfulness is the complete and utter destruction of Jerusalem, the holy city, and the subsequent exile of God's people, the Israelites, to Babylon. It's impossible to talk about this without taking a moment to consider and recognize the devastation in Gaza, Iran, and the pain in Israel itself. I mean, there's a lot going on and a lot we should be making ourselves aware of and praying for as Christians. And we need to put it in context. Israel is still waiting on their Messiah. They aren't living from a place of having received and experienced the grace and mercy given to us through Jesus. And see, the beautiful thing is we no longer have to put our faith in being part of a chosen people, a chosen nation. We put our faith in Jesus. But this text, it was written after a time when everything that the Israelites had hoped for, everything that they had worked for, 400 years of slavery, 40 years of wandering in the desert, watching God perform miracles and providing for them, seeing different enemies crumble before them because of the Lord. Everything God had promised them was destroyed. And then they were ripped from the land. And it's not just physical. They lost their spiritual home. For them, it was removal from God's presence. Now, it's easy to see God as the villain in this. And you could say, well, how does this prove that God is faithful? But the downfall of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah is not because of God's unfaithfulness, but it's the result of hundreds of years of Israel's unfaithfulness. Remember how God defined himself. He is slow to anger. He didn't rip them out after their first discretion. He kept drawing in. He kept coming close. He kept reminding them of who he was and who they were in him. And they kept withdrawing their trust from him. And they put it in other things. They built their lives on other things, things that would fade away in an instant. I'm here to suggest tonight that God's judgment actually proves his faithfulness. And you might ask why. I learned this when I was at university. I met one of the most amazing, free-spirited people I have ever known. And one of my best friends is Susanna, and she's very much in the likeness of this other friend of mine. Anyway, she's super cool. She walks in, and she's just like, I'm so free. I can do what I want. And I'm sitting there going, wow, I wish I could be like that. And she's really lovely, and we get to chatting, and we're talking about our childhood. And I need to tell you, I'm a police officer's daughter. Not just any police officer. He was a special weapons police officer who specialized in drugs and alcohol, and there were rules, and I had to follow them. And I was taught how to behave. And I paint him in a bad light. I have a lot of respect for my earthly father, and there's a lot of love. He loves me unconditionally. When I told him I was moving to England, he was like, okay, well, I've seen Taken. And I went, yeah, actually, that doesn't surprise me. When I moved to Sydney from my small town, it didn't go past me that there were patrols. I'm not exaggerating. There were patrols constantly past my house where I'd moved. I'd just see a police car. My dad used to be stationed at Burwood, which was around the corner from where I moved to in Sydney. And when we moved, he looked up the crime rate, and I think he got in touch with everybody in the area. And he jokes about it, but I'm really sure he actually took the license plate number of everybody parked on my street and went home and checked them. Anyway, that's my dad. He's wonderful. But I had rules, and I had to follow them. And then there was my mum. You thought my dad was bad. Here's a great story about my mum. When I was about 16, I was going out, and I said, okay, Mum, I'm going to go to the party we talked about. And she said, great, be home at 10. And I said, 10:30, and she went, 9. And I went, 10? And she said, 8:30. Do you want to keep going? I'm not kidding. That was the first time and the last time I negotiated with my mother about when she said yes and when she said no. Yeah, it was beautiful. So I was telling my very free-spirited friend this, and we were talking about it and joking about it, and I was recounting some of the stories of my childhood, and she went, oh man, I wish I had that. And I looked at her like, I'm sorry, what? And she said, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. Whenever I wanted, with whoever I wanted, for as long as I wanted, never asked a question. I could come and go as I pleased. It was free flow, and there were parts of that were really lovely, but I actually really wish that they cared. I really wanted them to say no. Just once. And she did different things and risky things to see if she could get their attention, and they were just like, yeah, go. And she's like, that level of trust in me was great, but I really wish that I'd had a few more strong lines that I could go down. See, God's judgment proves his faithfulness to us as a loving father, as a creator who cares deeply for our well-being, physical and emotional, in the present now, but also for eternity. When the boundaries are set and he says things like, you shall have no other God but me, he's not trying to inflate himself and make himself important. It's a guardrail for our souls. He's saying, you shall have no other God but me, because this is the lane. This is where my goodness is. It's a path to walk down. So we'll have the fullness of life. And we can trust God when he says, I will love you forever, that he means it. In the same way when he says, if you choose the path outside of me, you will perish. Not because that's what he wants for you, but because he's so invested in the goodness. It's not one or the other in terms of what God brings you. It's both. I love you. Walk with me. Think of it this way. We need accountability. See, we long for fairness and justice. We so often mourn unfair suffering and loss. All suffering and loss should be mourned, but we particularly feel it when we think it's unfair. Just this week, a young man has died alongside his brother, and a global community is in mourning. He just got married. He had so much promise, life ahead of him, and yet it's all gone. And see, Christianity offers us something that we desperately want and need to be true. We need there to be a consequence for the pain and the evil and the suffering in this world. There has to be a consequence for all of those who hurt others, who build empires on injustice, and for those who sit by and do nothing. What we long for is someone who's prepared to stand up and say, enough. This has to stop. I will fix it. I will end your pain. I will end injustice. And I will wipe every tear from your eye. And all of those who have caused them will be held to account. That's what we want. What we're not prepared for is when we're the ones being held to account. For every action, every thought, every inaction. God's judgment on us would be exile, because we are unfaithful, and that is terrifying. What we deserve is to be ripped away, but what we are offered is grace. When we, humanity, first pulled away from God and we decided in that moment, we don't trust you, we want to do it our way, we let in sin. And sin really is just about thinking of ourselves first, deciding in our hearts first, I know what's best. I don't have to think about anybody else. I'm going to make the best decision, rather than opening ourselves out and being accountable. It all becomes about what I think is right, what I can do, how I can be God. Now, when that happened the first time, God didn't pick up and move on. He didn't just destroy earth, start again. He drew closer. He came down and revealed himself to those who were seeking him, who were yearning for justice and truth. He came down and revealed himself to Noah, and he promised to never again wipe us from the face of the earth. Then he promised Abraham that his descendants would outnumber the stars. And then when the people cried out for a king to rule them, God was like, I'm here. I'm taking care of you. And they're like, no, we want a king. And he said, fine, I will give you one. And I will give you such a king that his kingdom will be established and never destroyed. And it will be a kingdom of peace, of joy, of righteousness, of love, gentleness, self-control. A kingdom built not on fear and oppression, but on love, on service, on sacrifice. So that's lovely. But then he goes one more. He says, on top of that, I'm going to give you a piece of me. I'm going to establish this kingdom on earth, and then I'm going to give you my heart. I'm going to give you my spirit. I'm going to give you full access so you can live in the fullness of life in this world. Also very nice. Didn't stop there. After that, he says, I'm then going to wipe away at some point everything, and we'll start again. And every tear you've ever cried, every prayer you've ever prayed, I hold them all, and you will never weep again. He drew closer. He came down from heaven and he took on flesh in Jesus, and he immersed himself with us. And in the greatest selfless act of love, he suffered the exile we deserved. He died on the cross, absorbing all our pain and our sin and our unfaithfulness, and he says, it's finished. 3 days later, he came back to life, offering us an eternal existence of peace and joy and righteousness. And how do we access that? We just say, I trust what you did, and I trust who you say you are. And that's it. I don't need to perform any ritual. I don't need to attend church every Sunday. I don't even need to fulfill all of the things that God asks of me, because I will fail at those over and over again. I just need to say, yes, Jesus. I trust that what you did is enough. No one has ever been completely faithful to God. Everybody fails, and we would all run away except Jesus. So now when God looks in judgment on us, and one day he will ask us all to give an account of every thought and every deed, none of us will be able to stand there and say, I'm a good person, and I have always been faithful to what you ask me. I have always been faithful to those that you have sent me to love. I have always been able to trust you and be trustworthy and be kind and be good and be gracious and self-controlled. I mean, I know I certainly can't say any of those things. But I can say I believe in Jesus. And so when God stands in that moment and he says, okay, Kylie, let's have the conversation, and then we'll determine what's going to happen next. And I go, yep. Jesus comes in and goes, no, wait. She's with me. All those things that she was unfaithful about, yes, absolutely, you're right. They deserve to be punished. The punishment is death. Yep, wait a second, I did that. I already paid that for her. And because I was blameless, it means that she's fine. Because I'm basically taking on everything that she owes you. I did it already. So she's with me. And I go, sweet, peace out, see you later. We'll worship you for the rest of my existence. He suffered that exile so that we don't have to. So, what do we need to do? What does it look like for us today? We need to trust in Jesus. Lamentations 3:24 says, the Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. All we need do is believe. We don't have to be faithful. We need to be faith-filled. That's what the baptism is about today. Rachel recognizing, I don't want to do this on my own. I can't. I will fail. But I trust that Jesus will hold me. So what does that look like? What does that look like in practice? It means practicing the presence of God, which we do so beautifully here on a Sunday evening, because those times remind us of who it is that we believe in. We will move in our unfaithfulness from God the less time we spend with him. Don't know if anybody else has ever experienced this. This happens very much to myself. I have these weeks where I'm on fire for God, and I'm like, yeah, I feel so close and so connected, and you spoke, and that thing came to happen, and I'm just so full of faith. And then the next week, I know it didn't quite work, and I get a little distracted, and I don't read my Bible, and then I haven't really got time for worship, and so I haven't really put you first, God, and then I try to do something in my own strength, and it fails, and suddenly I find myself all the way over here, and I'm like, God, I can't hear you. Where are you? You're failing. I'm not there. You're not going to catch me. And he's like, I'm over here. I haven't gone anywhere. You took 3 steps to the right. Come back. I still love you. Come back. And sometimes, in his insane goodness, which I've experienced quite a lot, is I'll be all the way over there, and he'll go, hang on a second. Just going to gently, quite strongly remind you that if you stand here, everything is a lot easier. And we can do that by doing all of those things. So being with him, the next step is obedience. Putting your trust in him means then doing the things he asks of you. And that is really scary. There are so many things. I asked God to tell me which one he wanted me to share tonight. There are so many things he has told me to do in my life. Our testimony is that when Bobby and I were first married, a month into our marriage, and we knew we were going to travel, but God said, get on a plane. And so we packed up everything. We booked a one-way ticket out of Australia, and we spent a year just praying to see what he would say. And eventually, it was months, he'd said London. It's great. We'll come for 2 years, Lord. I get pregnant, we're going home. And God said nothing. And I was like, that's a bit scary, but sure. About a year and a half into our trip, he tells me to change my visa, to swap to a 5-year visa. And I was like, I don't actually know that I want to stay here any longer. And he said, just do it, put it in process. So I did. And then Bobby and I had a conversation about starting a family, and we made a plan, and God gave us a child. But in the process of that timeline, I had quit my job. We decided to travel for a year, and God had told me to go home in December and see my family. And I thought, I've only been here a year. I missed one Christmas. They'll be fine. And he's like, no, but go home. So I found out I was pregnant on day 2 of our holiday. I had no visa. We were living in a studio apartment, and I had no job. So I went home to my very planned, functional family, my very established siblings who own houses and cars, and none of them know the Lord yet. And I said, yeah, we're pregnant. And Mom went, you're coming home? And I said, no. So did your visa come through? No. So what are you doing for work? I don't know. How are you going to afford maternity leave? Also don't know. How are you going to afford to have the baby? Yep, don't know that one either. And I got on the plane on the way home from Australia, and I was like, what are you going to do? I have nothing except you. And about 3 days before my first midwife appointment, my visa came in, but it had no information about whether I could access public funds. You know how it says, can access public funds. I was the spouse of an EU citizen. Everything I Googled, nothing told me. And I sit with my midwife, and she says to me, so what's your immigration status? And I went, spouse of an EU citizen? And she said, oh, great, you have full access to the NHS. And I wept and fell apart. And then a friend of mine said, I have friends who are looking for an assistant for work. I think you'd be great. And I said, you know I'm pregnant, right? She goes, yeah, but it's fine. They're good. Just go and meet with them. So I meet with these guys, and they're lovely gentlemen who have built their lives on their careers, and they're running a drama academy, and they are looking for an assistant. In the conversation, I said, well, I'm married. They're like, hey, good for you. Neither of them are married at this point. That was really lovely. And then I just really felt like telling them the truth. Like, I'm also pregnant, guys, so I'm in this for like 6 months, if you want me. Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't say yes to a job and then turn around to these friends of a friend of mine, who's a very good friend of mine, and do that. And they still took me on. And fun fact, if you don't have a regular job, you're not entitled to statutory maternity pay, but there's this thing called maternity allowance for freelance people. But you have to work in a job. I had worked in that job to the day that I needed to be entitled for any kind of payment before I went on leave. So my visa came through, and I had my baby girl, and God is faithful. And then he said, have a couple more. And I'm like, I just don't think I have the strength to go through with this. And yet, the second time I went on mat leave, this is also crazy in his goodness. It was COVID. We found out we were pregnant as COVID was announced. It was actually before we went on lockdown. So I just found out. I turned 30. I found out I was pregnant. And then they said, if you're pregnant, stay home. So I had to then tell my boss I was 3 weeks pregnant, or whatever ridiculousness it was. And the company that I worked for had that month changed their policy, and so they decided to match whatever the government was giving you. So I was part-time. And when I went on maternity leave for a year, I got paid more than I did when I was working. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. God says, do something, and now I say, I'm going to argue with you about it, but we all know how this is going to end because he's always proved faithful. And I was recalling this on my way in. At the moment, God and I are doing some lovely heart surgery on some of my character, which is great. I'm really excited for that. But what's amazing is that when he first called me to it, and he said, okay, this thing we need to deal with. And I went, yeah, absolutely. Because I trust you. And I know you're faithful. And whatever you have that you want me to deal with, everything will be better because of that. Faith is a partnership. It's a gift. And we get to ask God for more and be filled with more every day. It's participation. If you were going to gift me something, let's say you're going to put something in an envelope or an Apple Watch, that's the gift I'm going for at the moment. If you can give me an Apple Watch, The first thing I have to do is I have to receive it. I can't say, no, I couldn't possibly, thank you so much. But secretly want it, because we all do that, right? Is it twice? In some cultures, there's like a routine of like, you have to deny it 3 times for it to be. I mean, I haven't learned that grace. You want to give me something? I'm like, yes, absolutely, I'll take it. Don't know what it is, but thank you very much. I'm happy to receive. The second thing is, if I left it on my desk and did nothing with it, it's no use. It doesn't honor you because you've given it, and I can't use it. I've got to unbox it. I've got to put it to work. I've got to charge it up. I don't know how these things work. Turn it on, set stuff, sync stuff. You've got to do all of those things. You have to participate. So when you ask God for faith, you then have to do something with the faith that he gives you. And he doesn't expect us to fake it. At the end of our passage, the last sort of thought to leave you with this evening is, it says, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. I'm not very good at the quiet part. And there's a lot of things that we wait on that we don't see happen. And some of that was in the testimony. It's amazing to me. It almost astounds me when God answers prayers straight away. And I think sometimes he does it just to remind me that it's possible for it to be that quick. Because quite often I'll pray, you're like, I know you hear this, I know it sits beside you for all eternity, but if you could do that today, that would be awesome. But if you don't, that's fine, you're still God. And so he just reminds me occasionally, and will answer prayers quite quickly. Usually the prayers my children pray, which cracks me up, because I'll be praying the same thing all day. But anyway, I'm glad that he's answering their prayers. There are things that I have been waiting over a decade for. When God first called us to London, he put a dream in our hearts, and we are still here waiting. And I'm not going to lie, there are seasons where Bobby is full of faith for it, and there are seasons where I'm like, anything else, Lord? Can we pack up and go? Do we have to go through this again? Am I going to be in this same place in a year? And then there are seasons when I have full of faith for it, and he's like, what is the point? But we're still waiting. And this really spoke to me in preparation, that it is good to those who wait for him. It's good for my soul. How? I don't know. Because it means that I depend on him in every moment for everything. And the wait quietly is not about whispering my prayers. It's about not letting anxiety and not letting worry consume me. It's about my internal noise. So we're going to wait on God for a minute. I'm going to invite you all to stand up, stretch your legs. And we're just going to spend some time waiting on the Spirit. Now, you guys are pros at this, so I'm going to leave it for a little bit of time, so don't panic. If you haven't done this before, if you're a guest or you're just visiting, this might feel a little awkward. We are actually just going to stand here in silence. And part of that is waiting quietly on the Lord. It's just stilling ourselves to hear from him, allowing ourselves to receive what it is he's doing. So I just encourage you to close your eyes. Hold out your hands and just breathe.
Thank you for listening. We pray that God has spoken to you during this recording. For more information, please visit the website. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all our episodes. See you next week. God bless.